in DC. I'm in our office now, which is downtown in DC. And Wednesday morning, we submitted our amicus brief in the case involving Ripple and the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. This case has been really long and drawn out. It's almost 2 years in the making at this point. We still think we have many, many months before there'll likely be a resolution, but it's obviously something that we are following very closely. First, our brief was submitted truly as a friend of the court. We did not take a position on behalf of Ripple or the SEC. Our brief is meant to provide information to the judge and the court overall about the laws regarding to digital assets. In our brief, we argue that an investment contract is distinct from the subject of an investment contract. So we often talk about the Howey test. The Howey test is a decades-old Supreme Court case about orange groves, where there was an investment contract in orange groves where the orange is a commodity, it's not a security. And that's different from the investment contract itself. So we weighed in that in the digital asset space, there are no laws in place that provide that clarity, but also an investment contract is different from the subject of it. And in this case, it would be XRP is the subject of the investment contract that's at question in the courts. We also suggest to the court and make sure the court is aware that this case could provide legal precedent again, because we don't have regulatory guidance from the SEC on this particular matter. If the court weighs in on one particular way or the other, they could set a legal precedent. So we wanted to make sure the courts understood how big of an issue this is going to be. And how much of an impact this case will have on the larger digital asset ecosystem.
Hey, everybody, it's Eddie from Tokyo, and I'm not in Tokyo, but soon to be back in Tokyo. Until then, we're going to talk about Perianne Boring in this video. That was who you were listening to in the intro. She's the founder and president of the Chamber of Digital Commerce. They claim themselves as the leading blockchain association. And you can join also for $10,000 in annual fees, and they will maybe or maybe not represent your position. You can see here that Ripple is on the executive committee, but their focus has really been just Bitcoin and how to get an ETF through the system. If you argue in the amicus brief, as they did, that oranges in the Howey case were not securities, and you also cite that XRP is the same as an orange, then why in the world wouldn't they have a position? That is something I just don't understand. All right, everybody, let's get to it. We have a lot to cover. Come on, let's go. The market is mixed at the time of this recording. In the top 100, we have Cosmos up 5.29%, Chili's up 7.78%, and XRP up 4.82%. On the downside, it looks like Celsius Networks, their CEL token, is down 15%. And there is some significant loss in the Ethereum Classic, down 8%, and Ethereum is down 4%. Not looking strong to be able to even hold on to the 1,400 mark. Very surprising with the success of the merge. And some interesting new stats on XRP, according to Masari. 4.3 million XRP addresses are now in play. 300 of those have more than $10 million. 823 have at least $1 million. And in addition, in the last 24 hours, there were 66,977 transactions, either in receiving XRP or sending XRP. That's a 29% increase in the past month. And if you look at the balance, 21,000 were sending and 52,000 and some were receiving. What that means is there's a lot more XRP coming into those wallets to be held than going out to the exchanges to be sold. There's a big fact sheet, the first of its kind from the White House today, a comprehensive framework for responsible digital assets. There's some interesting points that I found. 16% of the adult Americans have purchased digital assets. And they do cite that the May crash, where Luna wiped out $600 billion from investors and consumer funds, is something not to ignore. And 9 reports, 9 have been submitted to the president thus far. And the call for the Treasury to support the feds in the ongoing research and CBDC was an interesting point. And actually, the Treasury is mentioned 11 times in having an active role going forward. And do not forget that Gary Gensler has been wanting that Treasury position. Representative Tom Emmer put out a tweet today that I found kind of surprising. He asked Gary Gensler, "Are you scared?" Because Charles Gasparino said that Eleanor has a scoop. The SEC is staffing up in anticipation of a heavy amount of congressional oversight if the GOP takes the House in the midterms, which it's looking very likely. The verdict of the SEC versus Library case was due today, but still at the time of this recording, I don't see any announcement on their Twitter feed. And also some news that came through, the European Central Bank, they have chosen Nexi for their digital euro prototype. Nexi is the European paytech that comes from a merger and integration of Nexi, Nets, and SIA. SIA and Quant have a very big partnership, and they have their testing complete. Don't sleep on Quant. And Rostin Benham of the CFTC is going to take this video out. And I think this clip will be interesting for you to understand how he sees his agency going forward in regulating crypto. Have a listen.
It's no wonder that the average American is interested in this. After all, respected investment advisors like Matt Damon and Larry David have told them this is a good investment. Everybody's doing it and everybody's winning. But we know the reality, and you pointed out the reality. That isn't the case when we look at the record. Over the last year, the value of the crypto market has fallen below $1 trillion, losing about 70% of its value. Bitcoin alone has seen its value plummet below $20,000 from a peak of $67,000. In June, Celsius, a crypto platform, suspended customer withdrawals and transfers, filed for bankruptcy. In May, the quote, stable coin, Terra collapsed, resulting in a $300 billion loss across crypto markets. Yet it was marketed as a stable coin. Don't get me wrong, there is risk and speculation, and it applies to a lot of different circumstances. But lucky for us that cryptocurrencies have not been inextricably tied to our banking system, or a $2 trillion loss would have been felt in a different way. And now we have companies like Fidelity saying they are going to include bitcoins and cryptocurrency in retirement accounts. If we went through another meltdown as we did this last year with retirement accounts and life savings at stake, it would have a much greater impact. I would say my concern is this. I'm glad we're talking about regulation. We have to have it. But I worry that we are doing enough to salve our conscience, that we're doing something, but not doing enough to put up guardrails and stop signs on the Crypto Express. In this term, regulatory certainty, I've run into that before as a term, that if we don't provide regulatory certainty to this industry, they'll leave. They'll go to Malta or El Salvador or Portugal or somewhere. Really? Do you think that's a possibility?
It is, but it's not a concern of mine. And Senator, I appreciate the point. It's what I said to Senator Ernst. We in the US have to balance our approach to regulation. And we've done this very well for decades. We have to be deliberate, we have to be cautious, we have to be patient, and instill the principles of regulatory foundations that have made our capital markets, our derivatives markets, including the Board of Trade, the best in the world. But I do think, coupled with that caution and deliberation, we do need to move forward. We need to engage. We need to understand that this is a new technology that's disrupting financial markets.
How much money does CFTC need to regulate cryptocurrency?
Senator, I think about a year ago, I think it was my November hearing before this committee, it could have been February, and I apologize for not knowing specifically. I said $100 million. I used that number because that was approximately the number that we received over the past few years since the financial crisis and what our funding level went prior to the financial crisis to after the financial crisis. But in an effort to get a more specific number, I had my staff work on this exercise specifically for a number of months. We've come up with $112 million over the first 3 years, divided not equally. We would be weighted on the front end of the 3 years. This would be for rulemaking. This would be for hiring. This would be for training, expertise. And this would be with outreach.
What's your current annual budget?
Current annual budget is $320 million.
So you're talking about a substantial infusion through the user fee of $112 million.
$112 million over 3 years. The first year would be about $40 million. So
really?
Yeah. And
so
we did calculations based on the rulemakings and some of the reports that are due, and then the engagement with the industry.
Well, I would like to talk to you about that because I honestly believe that you're lowballing it. That if you're serious about regulation of an industry where 1 in 5 Americans now has invested and had some risk, and we're now getting into retirement accounts and 401ks and the like, and the major brokers like Fidelity and others are starting to include this in their plan. There's a lot more exposure and a lot more risk than just a year or two ago.
Senator, I welcome the conversation. We did sort of off-the-cuff analysis based on examinations of who's registered with FinCEN and just doing a survey of markets. This is certainly not a hard number, and you may be right. And I certainly would welcome an upward movement of that funding level, but I did want to come back with some evidence to support a number as opposed to just saying $100 million, which is what I did last time. But time will tell, and I don't know how the market will either consolidate or grow after this bill would be passed. So it's hard for me to give an exact number, but I just wanted to do my best to defend a number that I'm sharing with the committee.
And this number, whatever it may be, is going to be generated from the crypto world in a user fee.
Exactly.